The middle of June, 1992, and Oakridge County has not seen real rain in 26 days. The black clay of the valley, so greedy for water in the spring, has turned against itself. It has pulled tight and cracked open in long, dry seams that run across the south pasture like old scars. Dust rises where it used to sit. The creek behind Miller Farm, the same one that carried floodwater away in April, now moves in a thin, brown ribbon barely wide enough to wet a boot. Jacob Miller stands at the edge of the north field before sunrise, when the air is still cool enough to breathe without tasting the dust. He crouches, presses 2 fingers into the soil, and rubs it between them. It crumbles instead of holding shape. He says nothing. He does not need to. His father's 1952 ledger, back at the house, has a page for years like this one, and Jacob has already read it twice this week. At the barn, the water trough for the cattle is down to its last third, and the old hand pump groans louder than it used to when Jacob works the handle. Sarah Miller keeps a small chalk mark on the kitchen window frame, tracking the level of the cistern day by day. She has stopped watering her garden by hose. She carries a bucket instead, giving each plant only what it needs, no more. She has done this before, in a summer before Ethan was old enough to remember. Ethan Miller drives the truck slow along the fence line, watching the corn. The stalks in the low ground are holding, but the stand on the rise is curling at the leaf edges, a sign he learned to read in a soil science course 2 years ago. He pulls a folder from the truck seat, flips to a page of numbers, and does the math again in his head. Evapotranspiration rates. Soil moisture deficit. The county extension office called it exceptional drought stage 2 days ago. Ethan already knew, because his corn told him first. Hank does not walk the fence line with Jacob this morning. He lies in the shade of the porch, panting in short, careful breaths, his gray muzzle low against the boards. He is not watching the horizon for weather the way he did before the April storm. His stillness now is a different kind, a waiting that has no direction to point toward yet. Sarah steps out with a bowl of water and sets it beside him. He drinks, but does not lift his head far to do it. Across the road, at Thomas Reed's place, a flatbed truck idles in the gravel drive, and 2 men in matching shirts are unloading long aluminum pipe sections stamped with a manufacturer's logo. Thomas stands with his hands on his hips, a fresh toothpick working at the corner of his mouth, watching the crew assemble something tall and mechanical at the edge of his largest field. It is the first center pivot irrigation system in Oakridge County, and Thomas has told half the men at the feed and supply about it already. Back in the Miller kitchen, Jacob sets his father's ledger on the table and opens it to a page dated 1936. Sarah reads over his shoulder. Ethan comes in from outside, sets his folder down beside the old book, and for a moment the 2 documents sit next to each other, one worn soft at the corners, one crisp and clipped. Neither Miller says a word about which one is right. Not yet. Outside, the wind moves dry across the yard, carrying a little more of the topsoil toward the ditch. And somewhere down the road, the new machine hisses to life for its first test run, throwing a fine mist of borrowed water into air that swallows it before it ever reaches the ground. By the second week of the drought, the problem has grown teeth. The county extension office posts a bulletin at the feed and supply warning that the aquifer levels beneath 3 townships have dropped further than any recorded summer since the station began keeping numbers. The Miller well, the old hand-dug one behind the barn, still gives water, but slower each day, and Jacob has started timing the buckets by the sound of the pump instead of a watch. At the supper table, Ethan lays out his plan. He wants to sink a new drilled well, deeper than the old one, and run a drip irrigation line to the corn on the rise, with a soil moisture sensor buried at the root zone to trigger the pump only when needed. He has already priced it. He talks about efficiency, about precision, about a system that will not waste a single gallon because a computer will decide exactly when the crop needs water and exactly how much. Jacob listens all the way through without interrupting, which is its own kind of answer. When Ethan finishes, Jacob only says that a machine that decides for you is a machine you stop watching, and a man who stops watching his own ground is the first one surprised by it. He does not raise his voice. He does not tell Ethan he is wrong. He tells him instead about a summer in 1936, when his own father, faced with a drought worse than this one, never drilled deeper and never lost a field. The old way, Jacob explains, has no pump and no sensor. It is tillage. After every light dew or the rare half-inch shower, before the sun climbs high, a man takes a spring-tooth harrow or a rotary hoe across the field to a depth of 2 to 3 inches, no deeper, breaking the surface into a fine, loose layer. That loose layer, Jacob says, does not wick water the way packed soil does. It stops the moisture underneath from climbing up to the sun and disappearing. Ethan calls it, before he can stop himself, a dust mulch, a term he half remembers from a textbook footnote on dryland farming practices used before large-scale irrigation reached the plains. He says it the way a man says something he has read about, but never trusted enough to try. The clash is quiet, the way it always is between them. Ethan argues that a drilled well and a timed drip system is simply water management done with better tools, that there is no shame in using what science has proven. Jacob does not disagree that the tools are clever. He only says that clever is not the same as careful, and that a field trained to expect water delivered on schedule grows roots that never learn to go looking for it themselves. Sarah, drying a dish at the sink, says nothing to either of them. She only watches the way Ethan's jaw sets when he is holding back a sharper answer, and the way Jacob's eyes stay fixed on his father's ledger instead of on his son. Outside, across the road, the center pivot system runs its first full test in the evening light. A slow mechanical arm rotating in a wide circle, throwing water in silver arcs that catch the last of the sun. Thomas stands beneath it with his arms crossed, grinning like a man who has already won an argument nobody asked him to enter. Saturday morning, the porch of the Oakridge Feed and Supply is crowded the way it always gets when the weather turns hard enough to worry a whole county at once. Men lean against the rail with coffee going cold, talking about wells running dry 2 farms over, about a cattle auction moved up early because the hay won't stretch through August. Someone mentions the millers are still turning soil by hand instead of drilling, and there is a short laugh around the group, not unkind exactly, but the kind of laugh men give something they think has already been left behind by the times. Thomas Reed holds court near the gravel lot, describing his new system to anyone who will listen, the pressure gauges, the timer box, the way he can water 40 acres without lifting a shovel. Jacob stands near the feed bins, listening the way he always does, saying little. When one of the younger men asks him straight out whether he's worried the old dust mulch trick won't be enough this time, Jacob only says that his father's ledger has outlasted 3 droughts already, and a ledger does not need electricity to keep working. Ethan stands beside his father, and for the first time all season, he does not immediately defend the modern approach out loud. He has been running the numbers on Thomas's system in his head, the horsepower draw, the well's recharge rate, the cost of running a pump at full output for weeks without rest, and something in the arithmetic bothers him more than he says. He watches Thomas walk off toward his truck, confident and unbothered, and Ethan's jaw works the way it does when a formula and a feeling do not agree. That afternoon, at the Miller kitchen table, Ethan makes his choice plain. He tells his father he wants to help with the tillage rounds himself, not just watch, not just calculate the timing from a chart. He wants his hands in it. Jacob studies him for a long moment, the way he studies weather before he trusts it, then nods once and tells him to be at the barn before first light. Sarah, setting bread to cool on the counter, says nothing about the decision, but she notes the date quietly in the family ledger beside the eggs and the barter accounts, the kind of entry she keeps for things that matter more than money. A few of the older farmers nod along when Jacob mentions the ledger, men who remember their own fathers walking a harrow across a field at dawn instead of waiting on a well. It is not agreement exactly, not yet, only the quiet recognition of something they had half forgotten themselves. Out at the porch, as the crowd thins, old Wexler from the co-op tells Thomas that dust mulching kept his own grandfather's corn alive back in the 30s, and that he wouldn't be so quick to call it old news. Thomas laughs it off, says the past is the past for a reason, and climbs into his truck. Nobody at the feed and supply argues further. They will let the summer decide. The tillage rounds start before the sun clears the ridge, when the dew is still heavy enough to darken a boot toe. Jacob hitches the old spring-tooth harrow behind the tractor, checks the depth stop with his thumb the way he has for 30 years, and pulls it across the first pass of the north field at a crawl. Ethan follows behind on foot with a hand cultivator for the tight corners near the fence, working the top 2 inches of soil into a fine, broken crumb, no deeper, exactly as his father showed him. The dust rises around his boots in soft gray clouds that stick to the sweat on his forearms. By mid-morning, the heat presses down hard enough that Jacob calls the work to a stop, not because the field is finished, but because tilling in the full sun does more harm than good, stirring moisture up into air that will only steal it. They wait through the worst of the afternoon in the shade of the equipment shed, and Ethan uses the hours to check his soil probe readings anyway, out of habit, though he has started writing fewer numbers down and watching the dirt itself more. He kneels, presses a clump of tilled soil between his fingers the way he has watched his father do 100 times, and finds it cooler than the untouched ground beside it. He does not say anything about it at supper, but he thinks about it long after the lamps are out. Day after day, the pattern repeats. A brief shower on the second evening, no more than 4/10 of an inch, and Jacob has both of them back in the field within hours, before the ground can bake shut again, breaking the crust while the moisture underneath is still fresh. Ethan's hands blister at the base of his fingers, then callous over. His clean canvas jacket picks up a permanent gray dusting he no longer bothers to brush off. He starts waking before the alarm, listening for the sound of his father already moving in the kitchen below. Doubt visits him anyway, the way it does to any man doing hard, slow work while a neighbor's field looks easier. Driving past Thomas's land each afternoon, Ethan sees deep green corn standing tall under the pivot's rotating arm, glossy and uniform, growing faster than anything on the Miller side of the road. He says as much to his father one evening, standing at the fence line, watching the arm complete another slow circle in the gold evening light. He asks, quietly, whether they are simply losing this one, whether pride is costing them a harvest science could have saved. Jacob does not answer with an argument. He only walks Ethan to the edge of the tilled ground, kneels, and digs down 6 inches with his bare hand, past the dry gray crust into soil that is dark and cool and holds its shape when he closes his fist around it. He tells his son that the corn does not need water to look green today. It needs roots that know how to find their own water in August, when the rain, if it comes at all, will not be enough. Ethan looks at the dirt in his father's palm for a long time before he says anything, and what he finally says is only that he understands the math now, though he still cannot see the ending. The sound of the work becomes its own kind of clock, the dry, papery rustle of harrow tines dragging through cracked earth, the soft, repeated thud of Ethan's boot heel breaking a stubborn clod the cultivator missed. In the evenings, Jacob sits on an overturned bucket by the shed and runs a whetstone along the edge of a hoe blade, the low shhk carrying across the yard while Sarah shells peas on the porch step, and for a while nobody says much of anything, because the sound itself is doing the talking. Ethan starts to notice that his father listens to the land the way other men listen to a weather radio, patient, unhurried, trusting that the information will come if he simply waits for it. Meanwhile, across the road, the center pivot runs longer hours each week as the drought deepens, drawing harder and harder on a well that was never rated for constant summer-long output. Thomas's foreman mentions, almost in passing at the feed and supply, that the pump has started running hot in the afternoons, and that the recharge overnight seems slower than it was in May. Thomas waves the concern off. Time is money, he says, and a stalled pump costs more than a warm one. The last week of July brings the peak of it, a stretch the radio calls the worst heat the county has logged in 4 decades, day after day past 100 degrees with no cloud thick enough to cast a shadow. The Miller fields stand crusted gray-brown on the surface, cracked into a fine mosaic, looking to a stranger's eye-like ground already lost. Across the road, Thomas's corn still glows an almost unnatural green, fed on schedule by a machine that has not rested in 6 weeks. It happens on a Tuesday afternoon with no warning beyond a low mechanical groan that carries across the fields. The center pivot's pump, driven past its rated limit for weeks by a well whose recharge could no longer keep pace with the demand placed on it, seizes and throws a bearing, the motor shrieking once before it dies into silence. Within the hour, the water stops moving through the long aluminum arm entirely, and Thomas's corn, whose roots never had reason to reach deep for anything, begins to show stress within a single. Scorching afternoon, leaves curling and graying at the edges faster than anyone expected. That same evening, dry lightning rolls in off a storm system that never drops a single measurable drop of rain over the valley. Only cracks of white light and thunder that rattles the windows. One strike catches the tinder dry grass at the fence line between the Reed and Miller properties, in a stretch of unmulched, sun-baked ground that has had no moisture near its surface in weeks. The fire catches fast in the dry stubble, a low orange line spreading with the hot night wind, and within minutes it is moving toward both properties at once. Hank is the first one on his feet, off the porch and barking, a sound none of the Millers have heard from him in over a year, sharp and urgent, planted at the fence line with his hackles raised, refusing to move. Jacob is out the door before Sarah finishes calling the county fire line, already running toward the tractor, and Ethan is right behind him, pulling on his boots 2 steps at a time. The fire reaches the boundary of the Millers' tilled north field and slows, then stalls, the flames losing their fuel against ground that holds real moisture only a few inches below a broken, damp crust. Unable to find the dry, packed surface it needs to keep racing forward. On Thomas's side, where the baked soil has nothing beneath its crust but more dry ground, the fire moves faster and meaner, catching the edge of his cornfield and threatening the fence line his own crew installed only weeks before. Jacob, Ethan, and 2 neighbors who arrive with shovels and wet burlap sacks work the fire's edge along the Miller boundary, using the natural stop the tilled ground gives them as a line to hold, beating back flare-ups before they can jump the gap. Thomas arrives at a dead run from his house. No catalog, no toothpick, just a man in his socks fighting for his own fence line. And for the first time all summer, he is working shoulder to shoulder with Jacob Miller instead of past him. The county fire truck arrives within the half hour and finishes what the men, the shovels, and the damp tilled ground had already mostly done. The morning after, the air still smells faintly of smoke, but the sky over Oakridge County is a pale, washed blue, the kind of quiet that follows any night when something dangerous has passed close and moved on. Jacob walks the boundary line at first light, Hank at his heel again, calm now, nose low over the blackened stubble that stops in a clean, straight edge exactly where the tilled ground begins. Past that edge, the Miller field stands scorched on its surface but whole, the corn on the rise bent slightly from the heat, but rooted deep and green beneath the dust. Across the fence, Thomas's field tells a harder story. A wide black scar runs through the corn nearest the property line, and beyond it, the rest of the crop hangs limp under a sun with nothing left to give it, the pivot arm standing frozen and silent over rows it can no longer reach. Thomas stands in the middle of it with his hands on his hips, not laughing this time, looking at the dead pump and the dying corn the way a man looks at a bill he did not expect. He walks over to the fence around mid-morning. Still in the boots he wore fighting the fire the night before, and for a while he does not say anything at all. He looks at the clean line where the flames stopped, at the cracked but living ground on the Miller side, and finally, he says that he has read every catalog there is on modern irrigation, and none of them mentioned that the ground itself could hold a fire back better than a fence. Jacob tells him the ground has been doing that a long time. Thomas asks, plainly, without any of his usual bluster, whether Jacob would be willing to walk him through the tillage timing before next summer. Jacob says he will, whenever Thomas is ready to learn it properly, starting to finish. Back at the house, Sarah records the exchange in her ledger beside the eggs and the barter accounts, a new line for a debt not yet repaid, the promise of a season's worth of teaching owed to a neighbor who asked for it honestly. She has learned, over many years, that these are the entries that keep a county together longer than any bank balance does. Ethan spends the afternoon walking his own rows alone, running his hand along stalks that are dusty and unglamorous and very much alive. He thinks about the folders still sitting on the truck seat, full of numbers that were never wrong, exactly, but that never once accounted for what 6 inches of undisturbed, moisture-holding soil could do against a fire a spreadsheet never saw coming. He finds his father near the equipment shed that evening, oiling the spring-tooth harrow's tines by hand, and stands beside him for a while without speaking, the way Jacob has always done when there is nothing worth interrupting. That night, Hank does something he has not done in longer than either Miller can remember. He walks the full length of the porch, past Jacob's chair, and lies down at Ethan's feet instead, resting his graying muzzle flat against the top of Ethan's boot. Ethan looks down at him for a long moment, then reaches down and rests his hand on the dog's head, and neither of them moves again until well after dark. Word of the fire and the fence line that held travels through the county faster than any of the Millers could have spread it themselves. By the following Saturday, 2 more neighbors stopped by the feed and supply counter asking Jacob, carefully, without the old joking edge in their voices, whether he'd walk their own low fields once the heat finally breaks. Old Wexler tells anyone who will listen that he always said his grandfather's tricks would outlast the new machines, and for once nobody argues the point with him. Jacob sits with his father's ledger open on his knee, a lamp burning low beside him, and adds a single new line in his own hand beneath the entry from 1936. He writes that the ground remembers what a man forgets, and that the years a person is most tempted to stop listening to it are exactly the years it has the most left to say. Somewhere down the valley, the last of the smoke has cleared from the sky entirely, and the crickets have started again in the ditches, the ordinary, unhurried sound of a summer night that very nearly went a different way, and did not, because 2 men chose, in their own separate seasons, to trust dirt over convenience, and because a dog with tired hips and failing eyes still knew, before either of them, exactly where the danger was standing.